In light of what's been going on in our nation and in our community over the past really years, but specifically since the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis, we wanted to have a larger conversation about race relations and specifically about race relations as it pertains to the police department. And Sheriff Troy Berry has graciously agreed to join us for this conversation. So over the next quite a long conversation, we're gonna unpack almost all of the questions that were sent to us by folks through our social media platforms. We announced we were going to do this. You sent us questions. We've printed them out, and now we're going to ask them to the sheriff. So stay with us and watch what's going on. So, Sheriff, in this section, we're going to deal with some specific questions that came to us about, well, a couple of general questions first, and then some specific questions that came to us about Charles County Sheriff's Department. So the first two I want to deal with, has there been a discussion or training within the department regarding racial injustice and how they can do their part in ensuring proper handling of all situations? We've talked about training a lot, but let's couple that with this second one. Is there a specific training that you would say you give to people to prevent, and I'm going to read this exactly the way it was sent to us,
okay,
to prevent murders from happening like what resulted from George Floyd? Specific training, you mentioned earlier, you've come to a point now where once a suspect is handcuffed, you don't even put them down on their chest.
That's
for
correct.
fear that they might. Are there other items like that that would say an officer arresting a suspect needs to be aware of these things that could cause unintended or maybe intended, but unintended or unnecessary harm to the individual that they are apprehending?
Absolutely. Through various trainings through the International Chiefs of Police, I am a member, I've attended the FBI Academy down in Quantico, also the National Sheriff's Association. We look at best practices. And you have to be very diligent because there's a lot of information that comes out in reference to these training seminars and the shifting of trainings in law enforcement. And again, there's particular, you don't place a handcuffed individual on their chest in reference to that because we talked about that briefly. But we also talk about certain strikes. You want to, unless it's a deadly force encounter, you want to make sure that there's no strikes to the head or anything unless it's a deadly force encounter. But we also try to, when all practical, if you have to take someone to the ground for a handcuffing technique, you try to get officers on either side of the individual to guide them to the ground instead of a more forceful takedown to the ground. So you try to do those kind of mitigating particular situations to try to address and to create, to not have head injuries or any significant injuries.
I will apologize now. I thought I turned that off. So go ahead. I'm sorry. It's rather embarrassing.
It's all good.
All right. Well, let me go to the next one.
Okay.
With such a high percentage of white sheriff's officers in an increasingly growing African American community, what measures of coaching is your organization undergoing to prevent racial profiling, abuse to economically challenged youth, and the risk of taking lives? In other words, well, I mean, it's clear the demographics of our county are changing, and so in maybe I don't know this. It seems like maybe the demographics of the Sheriff's Department are changing slower. Is that a true statement?
As far as Charles County is a majority minority community now.
Right.
And the sheriff's office, when I took over, is not reflective as the sheriff's office as the community. We are moving in that direction, and what we did is took a number of steps to make sure that we're trying to make sure that the sheriff's office is more reflective of the community that it serves. For example, we're underserved with African Americans in the sheriff's office. We're underserved with women in the sheriff's office. We're underserved with Hispanics in the sheriff's office.
Right.
So we're definitely trying to cover all of those demographics. So what we did applied probably, it had to be about 5 years ago. We applied for a grant where we were able to look at different videos that we were able to upload to the local cable stations to be able to show the diversity and also the opportunities here at the Sheriff's Office. Because we looked at it from a historical perspective, and we saw that a lot of times when they were recruiting, they were recruiting to diverse mediums. Maybe it was a local radio station. We sent out videos, and we also had partnerships with other diverse radio stations that speak to African Americans. I have went on, there's one radio station that speaks to the Hispanic culture, and that is a regional radio station. When I went on there and we did some recruiting assignments with those individuals. So we are definitely trying to make Charles County Sheriff's Office more reflective of the community that it serves. And the thing is one thing that we were missing, I identified in my recruitment section identified, is that we have a plethora of law enforcement officers that live in our community, whether they work for Prince George's County, whether they work for PG Sheriff's Office, Washington, D.C., or wherever. So we started recruiting officers that were already officers, seasoned officers. And from an economic standpoint, is a lot of a quicker return on your investment, which these people have experience. They have experience in policing in diverse communities. And it's very appealing, and we were able to recruit a number of those individuals to be able to police in the community where you live. So there's certain advantages to it. So we are definitely moving in a direction, trying to make Sheriff's Office more reflective of the community that we serve.
Do you do, this is not one of these, this is a question I have. Do you recruit in the local high schools?
Absolutely, absolutely. We have what is called the Criminal Justice Program in the Charles County Public Schools, where individuals who are desiring to be in law enforcement in some form or fashion from all of the high schools get to go to North Point High School. And we have a specific program. And those individuals, more often than not, either go in the military or they go into college. And in hopes getting a return on our investment where they come back home after serving the country, or after finishing the degree, they come back and serve here in Charles County. And we have had much success. But we also do in Charles County have a cadet program for those individuals that may want to go to the local College of Southern Maryland and get their degree. They are able to work with the Sheriff's Office for a period of time, and once they're about 20 years and 6 months, they can also apply for be a law enforcement officer in the state of Maryland. So what we definitely have done in this fashion, we are definitely targeting those individuals in our community who already live here, who have a stake in our community, and we also are laserly focusing on our young people in the school systems and being able to recruit those individuals back once they potentially serve in the military or go on to college.
So you recruit as well among the military?
Absolutely.
That's around us. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I actually know of folks in our church that have started, they were at Indian Head as Marines, and then left that after their 4-year stint, and now they work for you.
Yes, sir.
So, all right. I'm going to read, we're going to go to the next section here. In Minnesota, the officers that officer had several past bad behaviors, and they were never removed from the force. Have you, as the sheriff, tasked the department to look over personnel files of your officers to ensure you're relieving bad officers? Is there a review process, even if someone's not, just that looks at what are the complaints, and is there a repetitive complaint going on here?
That is a very good question, and I think we covered that in one of the previous sessions. We purchased a computer program called Blue Team.
Right.
And that information is inputted, whether the complaints from internally, externally, anonymous, is all put in a central hub. And we have an early warning system that will alert the Sheriff's Office personnel in our Office of Professional Responsibility if there is some particular issue that have come up in that's reported to its Blue Team. Because it's critically important that you use technologies, these things. Because in those particular situations, a lot of agencies, if you go to them, it's all done on memory.
Right.
But if you have a computer system, and it may be something very benign, but you can look at it and kind of allow that technology to help you manage your organization.
A computer will push out a graph of data that is not biased. It's just the data.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Some of these could get repetitive, and so we'll read them, and then we'll see where we go from there. How are you dealing with the possibility that some, not all, of the officers serving as policemen may have racist beliefs? Are complaints against them taken into consideration during evaluation time? Is there let's start here. Is there an annual evaluation of each officer, or?
Yes, there's an annual evaluation of each officer. And we do have an opportunity where we do have officers have an opportunity to sit before their supervisors, and they're evaluated on their performance, on their professionalism. And it's also, we're moving to a new evaluation system where we are having them search Blue Team, having them search their personnel records for other complaints. And that was prior to this incident involving Mr. Floyd. So we want to make sure that we have an overall snapshot of what our staff member has done from year to year, and making sure that if it's something that needs to be brought to the agency's attention, we want to make sure it's brought there and addressed immediately. And if that person is involved in any alleged misconduct, we want to make sure it's appropriately investigated. And if that person is in violation of the agency's protocols within the agency, unfortunately, sometimes that person has to be separated from the department.
Okay. All right. Now, this is a specific story that came up, but it's got a question at the end. In our neighborhood or community, and I have no idea what community that is because the one that wrote in the question did not specify. In our neighborhood or community this past weekend, 6 to 8 young black teens had been walking around the neighborhood. I'm a white female and had seen them throughout the entire day, leaving the same house on our street, just hanging out together, walking around the circle and ponds, then returning. No problems, and I had no concerns. Just teens going for walks, hanging out after EOY school. Later in the afternoon, our neighborhood app alerted that they had been stopped by 2 community police cars because they, quote, looked out of place, end quote. When did we go from stopping people just for walking around and not after any legal action? Walking is not suspicious activity. Even if they were visiting a friend from other areas or neighborhoods, that's a good thing, not illegal. I understand groups of teens around here tend to get into fights or mob when the group gets larger, but how about stopping when something occurs, not stopping peaceful groups of friends from walking around? I'll just let you speak to that.
Do you know when this incident occurred?
I just read you everything I've got. We created a simple WUFU form for this, which is a simple form that they could fill out. We didn't ask any data from them, so we have no idea what neighborhood this came from.
If it happened during the COVID-19 pandemic, we were receiving a lot of complaints for juveniles not wearing face covers, not properly social distancing, and things of that nature. So we may have had officers go out there and as based on the governor's order, please wear face covers, please properly socially distancing. And most of our concern was with our young people because a lot of times they didn't wear face covers and they weren't properly socially distancing.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. What are the statistics on police violence in our area? Are there any excessive force cases being brought up on police officers right now, and where would we find that information?
That's a good question. Approximately 2 General Assemblies ago, there was a House Bill 1016 that mandated that law enforcement entities to the state of Maryland publicize their manuals online. So our manuals online. So you could, sometimes people say they wanted to know the patterns or the policies and the manuals and the practices of an agency. So they wanted to be more transparent. So agencies had to put their policies online. As a result of that House Bill 1016, we have to publicize anytime we discipline an officer. And that information is also on our website. We do not put the officer's name because we can't do that because of employment law, but we put a case number and the discipline as a result of what happened as a result of the case. But moreover, when we had House Bill 1016, if we have a disciplinary hearing for an officer, that is publicized, and you as a citizen has a right to come in, and we will to be in there personally in that hearing, or we could have a satellite location where we video. You can pipe into it, and you can see it on a monitor.
Okay.
So those are laws that are on the Maryland books that talks about transparency about discipline, talks about transparency about policies and practices within the sheriff's, but it also evenly gives you a front seat view of any disciplinary hearings that you have with any of the staff members.
And where is that published? Is that information published on your website solely?
On the Charles County Sheriff's Office website.
Okay.
So if you live in Prince George's County, their information was going to be published somewhere probably on their website, and any other jurisdiction. So you have that information. But moreover, if you file a complaint as a citizen in reference to an issue that you had with an officer, and there's a formal written down complaint, and you logged yourself as the complainant, there will be follow-up, and you will receive a written letter from that law enforcement entity about the disposition of that case.
Okay.
So there is follow-up and follow-through in regards to situations when you have complaints in regards to officers in the state of Maryland.
Okay. What are the consequences for officers using excessive force in Charles County?
Using excessive force in Charles County, we have what is called a disciplinary matrix. And you may have a minor infraction to a major infraction. That could be as much as a suspension or to termination.
Okay. Okay.
It just depends
on what happens.
It depends on the infraction.
But you have a matrix that
Yes.
lets you guide that.
And if it's so, in all of these, and I just want to kind of back up, and I don't want to go too fast through this. Anytime that we have an allegation of a criminal act against an officer or a correctional officer in Charles County, all of those cases are reviewed by the state's attorney's office.
So you mean a criminal act by an officer,
An
not
alleged
against
criminal,
an officer? Okay, got
alleged
it.
criminal act by an officer. So, for example, if someone says that Officer X assaulted me, that will go down as a criminal act. So it's not me as Sheriff Barrett solely saying that this investigation is not going forward. Our protocols are this: we do the investigation, we take all information to the state's attorney's office, they review it and make a determination if it's a criminal in nature, and then they have the autonomy to charge the officer or correctional officer for the criminal violation alleged by the complainant. So it's not just me as a sheriff having the autonomy to, this is our protocol and this is our practice. So the state's attorney will make a determination if criminal charges are going forth or not.
Okay, so then they have a whole division there that works on that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And they'll work
All right.
in conjunction with our Office of Professional Responsibility.
Then that actually answers the next question. Is there a community accountability committee or review? Well, maybe it doesn't. This is a little different. Is there a community accountability committee or a review board in this county, a body that reviews these type cases locally, or reviews arrests and monitors body cameras, which we don't have yet, to continuously update officers on their practices? Is there a local review board?
No, there isn't. And I'll say this, Pastor Mike, and I've been saying this ever since I've been sheriff. I am open, I'm transparent to this community, and I do not mind oversight. And I don't want to get hung up on semantics.
Yeah.
People talk about review boards or review committees. We do not in Charles County have a review board or review committee. But what we do in Charles County is called a Board of Public Safety.
Okay.
This board is inactive. The county commissioners can appoint and put people on this board to look at situations of excessive force or any other situations dealing with public safety. So many years ago, 28 years ago, when I was applying to be sheriff, I had to be hired by the Board of Public Safety.
Okay.
These individuals comprised of the sheriff and whoever that the county commissioners put on this particular board hired law enforcement many years ago. So there is a mechanism for oversight in reference to this community, and it's called the Board of Public Safety. I have given this information countless times to community leaders, and I said, if this desire to have some oversight, of our law enforcement officials or our public safety officials, there's a mechanism. You don't have to and I don't believe in reinventing the wheel.
Right.
There's already something on the books for us to have this. So, and I want to be very clear to your audience, the sheriff's office or me as the leader, I don't mind oversight. There is Board of Public Safety that can be instituted by the Board of County Commissioners.
So it exists,
It
it's
exists.
just not been populated by the commissioners at this point.
Exactly.
Okay, all right. Well, let's put the rest of these questions in the next section that we're going to talk about, and jump into that. And I'd like to probably in the next session drive ourselves down to just a real conversation about what do you think we can do to really bring some healing and to bring some peace to this. So that's how I'd like to wrap up the next one. So